All right.
Are we live?
We're live on one camera.
Oh, we're live on one camera.
We're live on two cameras, and we're about to go live on three cameras.
Oh, wow. Three cameras.
So let's get going.
All right.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Avi. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Horrible about this situation with Gaza and 500 rockets now. Crazy. But can I start with a positive?
Yes.
Life is about celebrating, no matter the pitfalls. And we just had a family celebration the past, week for my son's bar mitzvah. So I'm on cloud 9 and trying to stay there. There we go. More rocket fire. More rocket fire. They're just going to keep on coming. So I'm going to hold on to the positive as now we dive into the crazy reality that we're living through. So Caroline, Gaza, what is going on? How are we allowing 500 rockets and virtually doing nothing?
I don't think we're virtually doing nothing. First of all, Mazel Tov on your son's bar mitzvah. It is very important that we remember and keep our eye on the ball, that our families and the Jewish people and our continuity, and particularly our families, are the most important thing. And that's why we're doing it all. And Mazel Tov, a big Mazel Tov to the Abelow family and to your son. Which one was it?
Number 3, Ziv.
Ziv. On this auspicious occasion, very important. So great. And as for the other stuff.
Yes, and I think it's important that you said we're not virtually doing nothing. That's very important.
We're not, look, Israel has, like you said, over 500 rockets. It's 500 and counting, right, have been shot at Israel since 4:30 in the afternoon yesterday, and it's now 10:04 in the morning, okay? So, and we can expect more, right? I mean, so probably by 4:30 in the afternoon, if nothing else changes, we may be up to 1,000. And there's no reason to assume that we won't be. I mean, there's every reason to assume we will be, which is why they canceled school in all of these cities around Gaza, right? Within a 40-kilometer radius, right? So you have hundreds of thousands of kids who are at home with their families because it's not safe to send them to school.
Right.
All right. So that's what, and who is doing it? Who is shooting up these rockets? Who are these forces that are? And one other very important thing is that we had the Cornet missile direct shot at the bus that was transporting soldiers along the border with Gaza yesterday at 4:30 in the afternoon. Major miracle, right? Because right before the missile hit, 50 soldiers alighted the bus, and then the driver was driving the bus into the parking lot, and that was when the missile hit, okay? So there are a couple really important things about that missile. There are 3 important things about that missile strike. One is that it was I don't know whether it was a precision missile that was shot well by highly trained missile commando, in Hamas that has been training for this mission, or whether it was a precision-guided Cornet, which is possible. I don't know. One way or another, it's bad. Second thing is that when you look at the footage of the missile strike, it's hard to know where it was taken, whether it was taken inside of Israel or it was taken inside of Gaza. Because
the video was taken.
You don't know where the people who took the video were standing. It's hard to see from the film and where they were because they were very, very close. And the Cornet has like a 6-kilometer range, so wherever it was, they were close. But the footage of the bombing of the missile strike was taken very close. And this is important because it points to the fact that Hamas has developed, particularly over the last 7 months, a very sophisticated espionage operation against Israel, where they're tracking all the movements and the tactics of the IDF forces deployed along the borders. This has been going on for 7 months. How do we know? Because 7 months ago in March, they began having these massive riots along the border fence, generally every Friday, sometimes every day, whenever they want. Now, what are these things? People say, they're demonstrations. That is a lie. They're not demonstrations. They are a military operation. They're a military operation. We know of hundreds of instances where Hamas, Islamic Jihad members, whomever, crossed the border under the cover of these riots and were intercepted inside of Israel. How many of them were not intercepted inside of Israel? We don't know. We have hostile elements inside of the Bedouin community inside of Israel, which is also in close proximity to Gaza. So we don't know how many of them are in Israel. We don't know anything. We know that over the weekend, right, Hamas spy infiltrated Israel. The army says that they saw him go in through with the filming of the photos. We don't know why he wasn't intercepted as soon as he came in. We don't know how long he was in Israeli territory walking around until he set fire to greenhouses in the Tiva Asara kibbutz. We don't know, but we know that he was there. We also know that under interrogation, according to the Shabak, the Israel security agency that has been interrogating him, that he entered Israel on 7 previous occasions. So he is a spy. He was carrying out surveillance work inside of Israeli territory. He was entering Israel under the cover of these operations. Now, the other thing we know about these riots, right, is that they have been committing arson, mass arson with their incendiary balloons, right? So what does that mean? We've been talking about the environmental disaster that they've been setting fire to all of these forests. What do forests provide Israel? Natural ground cover, right? They're denuded. So now we're entirely exposed to them. We can't operate behind the cover of forests because the forests are gone. Same thing with a lot of these fields that they've been setting fire to. So when you look at the operational implications of what they're doing and you understand that these demonstrations have not been demonstrations, but rather they've been a military operation against Israel that has been preparing the ground for a larger military campaign against Israel. And you see the footage taken of the missile strike against the bus yesterday, and you can't tell, in fact it seems that the person taking the film was really just like 150 to 200 meters away from the bus. I mean, that it was right there. I don't know where the bus was. Maybe it was right at the border.
And I think it's important to point out, it was not security surveillance. Like a lot of what we see is either security surveillance or someone who's in the area that happens to take a video. There's someone focused on videoing this bus.
Right, he was waiting for it. He was taking a picture of the bus before it blew up as it was driving very slowly into the parking area. There was a soldier standing outside of the bus, directly outside of the bus. I would assume that this is a soldier that's in critical condition now, although I don't know. It would certainly make sense, because he was right next to the bus as it exploded. And the driver got off without injury, which is like a crazy miracle. I mean, It's almost as large as the miracle of the 50 that got off the bus before him.
Right. Oh, and can I throw in the comments of the driver?
Sure.
The driver was interviewed after he came out of the hospital, and he basically said he's a Muslim, Arab, Israeli bus driver, and he said God loves the Jews. He goes, I just let off 50 soldiers a minute ago. If the missile would have come in a minute earlier, all those 50 soldiers would have been killed, and they weren't. So this is an Israeli Muslim Arab who said God loves the Jews. But we don't want to rely on these miracles.
Right.
We want to
the
defend
thing
ourselves.
is that the other thing that we have to understand, so first of all, we don't know where the video was taken. We understand that they have been operating a major surveillance operation against Israel inside of Israeli territory, operating under the cover of these riots, which of course the left is perfectly happy to attack us on, because they're acting as shields for the enemy. Let's just be very clear about that. The final thing that's interesting about this missile strike from a strategic perspective, so we have the fact that they have either very highly trained missile crews that are able to deliver precision strikes, or they have precision guidance on their missiles, okay? We have the fact that that we now understand the operational implications of the arson attacks that Israel has been experiencing. We understand the operational implications of the mass demonstrations along the border that have been taking place for the past 7 months. The final thing that we understand from this missile strike, which is why it's so important to focus on it, because when we're talking about how Israel's supposed to respond, is that according to Ehud Yari, the Arab World commentator on Israel Chadashot network, one of the longest operating Arab affairs experts in the Israeli media, and he's very well connected. Okay, so he's not, some guy who just got a master's degree in Arabic or something. He knows what he's talking about, more or less. He said that the first broadcast of that footage of the missile strike was broadcast on Iranian television in Lebanon.
Unbelievable.
Okay, so you have a strike that was carried out, and according to the Palestinians, jointly by Hamas and Islamic Jihad that are sitting together in the same operational headquarters. Hamas is funded by Iran, trained by Iran, armed by Iran. They're not their only sponsor, but they're one of three. Turkey, Qatar, and Iran are the principal state sponsors of Hamas. Okay, so they have Iran is very close to Hamas. Hamas leadership is in Iran quite frequently, and the Hamas leader is living in Beirut in the Dakhia quarter. Aruri, who was expelled under duress from Qatar, I think, came to Lebanon. He settled there. And then you have Islamic Jihad. Islamic Jihad is an Iranian organization, no different from Hezbollah in the sense that it is owned and operated by the Iranian regime. So you have Hamas, which is at least beholden to Iran, at a minimum, and you have Islamic Jihad, which is Iran. Okay? They carry out this missile strike, which was a strategic strike. It showed it has strategic implications. And the first place that broadcast the video footage of it was Iranian television.
Wow.
So what does this really tell us about the nature of what we're experiencing here? Who are the hands that are moving the actors in Gaza? Who is the brain that ordered this massive escalation of Hamas assaults against Israel? It isn't Sinwar and Hania, the Hamas terror masters in Gaza. They're not independent actors. They're not making this decision. The person making this decision was Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, in conjunction with Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah. Okay, and the people who are carrying it out, their contractors are the terrorists in Gaza. It's the terrorist regime in Gaza run by Hamas in conjunction with Islamic Jihad. So this is a proxy war. This is a proxy campaign. This is an Iranian campaign that is being carried out against Israel. It's very important that we understand this because this is a strategic foundation of what we're seeing.
Meaning when we're saying, let's destroy Hamas, we shouldn't be talking, it's not about destroying Hamas, it's about going out to war against Iran.
It's about following Iran. It's about understanding that this is an Iranian war against Israel. Now, why is it, right, because this has been going on for 7 months, right, to ever-escalating degrees.
Right.
Why is it that Israel hasn't invaded Gaza? Because that's following the shiny object, right? That's biting at the bait. That's saying, okay, we're feeling the pinch here, and we're going to go after it. But then the shiny object moves. And we're constantly following the shiny object. We're going after, again, another metaphor. We're going after the tip of the iceberg, ignoring the iceberg. We cannot do that because then we end up, I mean, frankly, it's like military masturbation. You're just setting off things and it's not going anywhere. Why isn't it going anywhere? Because you're not actually doing what you have to do. Now, so that's why, we see that Netanyahu is just treading water, right? I mean, he goes, even last night, while, we had, this is Cody, she's annoying. She hasn't gone on a walk yet, and she really wants Mom to take her out, but I will afterwards. So, Netanyahu is treading water, because, why? Because what's the other problem is that this isn't Iran's only proxy force, and it's also Iran's less powerful proxy force, right? Because Iran's most powerful proxy force is in Lebanon, and that's Hassan Nasrallah. And what did he say over the weekend? Israel has apparently been delivering threats to the Lebanese government, which, by the way, is controlled by Hezbollah, but who's counting, saying if you don't dismantle the missile production facilities, precision-guiding missile production facilities that Hezbollah has opened up in Lebanon with Iranian technology, then we're going to have to take them out. So it was a threat that Israel has been delivering reportedly to the Lebanese government for the past several days, repeatedly. Okay? Hassan Nasrallah answered those threats on Saturday, okay, in a speech that was, broadcast. I don't know where it was from. Who cares? where he said that under no circumstances are they going to dismantle the missiles. He said we would, we're not, that's what he said. I don't remember the exact quote, and who really cares.
Right.
That's what he said. He responded to Israel's threats by saying, go F yourself. All right. So if Israel only goes out, in 2006 we had a situation where on June 25th, 2006, Hamas, in conjunction with Fatah at the time, carried out a joint cross-border operation through a subterranean tunnel into Israel to Kerem Shalom crossing. They attacked an Israeli tank that was deployed to the border region. They killed 2 soldiers and wounded 3. One of the 3 that were wounded was a corporal by the name of Gilad Shalit. Right? They kidnapped Gilad Shalit and they brought him to Gaza, where he sat as a hostage for over 5 years. Right? In the aftermath of that strike on June 25th, 2006, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Fatah opened up a major bombardment of Israel. All right? A major bombardment of Israel. We forget about this.
Right.
Okay?
There have been so many.
Right, because we forget about it. Why do we forget about it? We forget about it because on July 12th, 2006, Hezbollah carried out a cross-border attack against a military patrol along the border with Lebanon.
Right.
They killed 3 soldiers in the patrol, stole the bodies of 2. Eldad Regev and Goldwasser stole their bodies into Lebanon. In hot pursuit of Hezbollah and the bodies of Goldwasser and Regev, 8 more IDF soldiers were killed in Lebanon that morning. 5 more soldiers were killed. So in total, 8 soldiers were killed. 2 of the bodies were stolen, right, into Lebanon. And then following that, or immediately while this was going on, Hezbollah opened up a massive bombardment of Israel that became known later as the Second Lebanon War. So the war started in Gaza. On June 25th, and then 3 weeks later, or 19 days later,
The war developed.
the war became a two-front war, with the main operations taking place in Lebanon. And who was behind both Hamas and Hezbollah? Iran. We call this war the Second Lebanon War, but it wasn't. It was the first full-blown Israeli-Iranian war. We didn't do well in that war because we failed to recognize that this wasn't a war against Hezbollah or Lebanon per se, or even Gaza per se. We failed to recognize that this war was actually a war that Iran was waging through its proxy armies. Okay? Now fast forward to today.
Right.
Hezbollah's operational capabilities in 2006 were unlike, were huge. It was something we hadn't seen, we hadn't experienced in the years that we were fighting the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria and Gaza during the terror war from 2000 to 2005. They were powerful. They were capable of shooting non-guided missiles, but shooting missiles that reached Tel Aviv and Dimona, right? It covered almost all of Israeli territory. They had a range of over 200 kilometers from Lebanon, and they continued shooting missiles at Israel until the ceasefire went into effect in August. Right? Today, what they have at their disposal makes what we experienced in 2006 look like a walk in the park.
That's crazy.
They have 150,000 missiles by the IDF count, all pointed at Israel. Okay? And now, because of what's happening in Syria, we have every reason to believe that at least a portion of those missiles are GPS guided, meaning that they can attack the Kiryat, the military headquarters in Tel Aviv, and whatever, and Air Force bases, and who knows what else. Okay, so this can set Israel back 20, 25 years. Now, how do you deal with that? Right. So until now, Israel's response has been to try to work with the United States to erode the power of the Iranian regime, following what Obama did, which was massively empower them during his tenure in office. But there's a problem here. There's a huge problem here. Because you can't erode the power of the Iranian regime fast enough to prevent a massive war. And any way you have to assume that if the Iranian regime ever does fall, they're going to try to take us down with them. And what we're seeing now is an Iranian-initiated campaign against Israel. And when are they doing it? Not surprisingly. What's happening in Syria?
I don't know what's happening in Syria.
Well, until September 25th, the Russians were sitting on the fence. They had one leg in Israel, they had one leg in Iran, right? So that they were empowering the Iranians through their Syrian puppet Bashar al-Assad in Syria. They saved his regime, meaning that they saved Syria for Iran. Iran and Hezbollah, they're the same thing. Hezbollah is a wing of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. It is not a separate entity. It's part of the Iranian regime. So you had Russia with a leg with them. They were providing air coverage. They were the Air Force of Iran and Hezbollah in Syria. The Russian Air Force, the Russian SAM missiles. They are the Air Force of Bashar al-Assad, of Iran, and of Hezbollah. On the other hand, what did their leg in Israel do? So their leg in Israel said, okay, Israel, we get that you consider Iran's deployment inside of Syria to be a strategic threat. We don't hate you. We don't want to get involved with Iran's war against Israel, and therefore we're going to permit you. We're going to permit you to continue to attack Iranian targets in Syria that you consider to be a direct threat against your national security. And so, since 2015, since the Russians first established their beachhead in Syria, and since have expanded their control over large swaths of Syria, they have been sitting back and allowing Israel to coordinate, give them, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, notice that we're going to be attacking a target here or there in this general area, so that they would get out of the way, right? And in early September, Israel said that over the past 12 months, the previous 12 months, it had carried out over 200 such missile attacks in Syria. So that's about 4 a week, right? September 25th, Israel carried out an attack that it coordinated with the Russians. That is, it gave them a heads up about it, to attack a shipment, I think it was, of guided missiles that had just landed in Damascus airport that were being housed in some warehouse close to the airport in Damascus. And Israeli bombers came and blew up the target. The Syrians, who are incompetent in operating SAM missile batteries, as the 200 successful Israeli strikes over the previous 12 months, preceding September 25th, showed, responded to the Israeli attack by indiscriminately shooting anti-aircraft fire from a SAM-200 battery that they had, an S-200 battery they had. And Israeli jets were already back in Israeli territory if they'd ever left it. And they shot down a Russian Ilyushin spy jet that was patrolling the area. So 15 Russian crew members in this plane were killed when it was shot down. Now, Russia could have responded to this by saying, you numbskulls, right? And replacing the Syrian SAM crews, say, with Russian crews or whatever, and letting it go at that. But they decided not to. They used this event as a means to enact a strategic pivot where they took their leg that had been on the Israeli side of the fence, wow, and they turned it over to the Iranian side of the fence. So now they have 2 legs on the Iranian side of the fence, no legs on the Israeli side of the fence.
Even though we were not the real perpetrator, it was actually the Syrians who did it. They used this in order to stab us, whatever terminology you want to leave. It
wasn't to stab us in the back. It was because, for whatever reason, the Russians have decided that their interests are no longer served by preventing a war between Iran and Israel. And so they're not.
Right.
And not only are they not preventing it, they're siding with the Iranians against Israel, right? That's what they're doing. So the Russian Defense Ministry used rhetoric, anti-Semitic rhetoric in response to this thing that we haven't heard since the Soviet Union days, since, Yuri Andropov and the KGB. We haven't heard. So Shoigu, the defense minister, and all of his press people and his deputies and whatever, they're attacking the Jews, right? and very dangerous. And so Netanyahu, who had developed this really close relationship with Putin over the past 3 years that enabled Israel to have 3 years of a Russian leg on our side of the fence, has been chasing after Putin, trying to meet with him, trying to talk to him, trying to see how to fuse this conference, get that leg back on our side. But in the meantime, consider this, for 7 weeks, according to the media, Israel has carried out one attack in Syria. And in the meantime, did the missile shipments stop coming in? Oh, of course not. So all of the things that Israel deployed its forces to prevent coming into Syria and through Syria, traversing the border to Lebanon, have been going on. They're always going on. But Israel hasn't been attacking them. So now Lieberman says, we have forces on the ground, we're doing it, blah, blah, blah. Maybe. But it's hard to argue with the conclusion, right, that Israel has been constrained in a significant way by Russia's change. Now, what did they do? It's not just that they stopped agreeing to good prior coordination with Israel. They brought in immediately after September 25th, as if everything was just waiting for this opportunity, right?
S-300.
The S-300. So what's Israel doing? So Israel's trying to figure out how to deal with it. So last week we saw television reports, right, that Israeli Air Force pilots were conducting a massive exercise with the Greek Air Force in Greece, and then portions of it were also taking place in the Negev here. What were they doing? What were they training? Greece has an S-300. Okay? So they were training in evasion techniques to get past the S-300 battery that is now operated by Russian personnel in Syria so that we can reinstate those aerial things. This shows how bad it is, right? That we sent our pilots to Greece to train against the S-300. You know, this is all, nobody's talking to me. I'm just reading the news, okay? So I could be totally wrong in my interpretation of everything, but I think I make a compelling case. So then, why would Iran strike now?
Well, I imagine because of the deterrent, how the sanctions and its effect on the economy and the Iranian regime. So who best to turn the tide around, but go after Israel, go after the Jews, just like historically always happens.
Right, but I mean, I don't even think, right now the sanctions, whatever, the Americans gave all these cutaways for the oil exports. I'm not sure how quickly and, you know, how immediate the impact of the oil sanctions is going to be, because everybody who's been buying Iranian oil has been given leave by the Americans to continue to buy Iranian oil, so I'm not really sure what the implications of those oil sanctions are going to be, at least not in the immediate term.
Okay, then why?
Well, the Americans did that because, you know, according to, I think it was David Goldman, I can't remember, but somebody made an analysis of the sanctions. So the problem is that America enacted sanctions against Russia over the Crimea invasion. And the Russians just said, F you. And the Europeans did too. That's the problem. So that the power of sanctions as a weapon in statecraft was already diminished by the time that the Trump administration vacated the U.S. Acceptance of Obama's devastating nuclear pact with Iran and reinstated sanctions. And what we see now is that the Europeans are acting overtly to try to undermine those sanctions, so that they're not as powerful. They're powerful, but it means that even if they end up working completely well, it's going to take much longer.
So if it's not the sanctions, what's the reason all of a sudden now?
Because now they have a sympathetic strategic environment.
Oh, you're saying because now Russia has 2 feet siding with Iran, they feel they have the backing.
Yes, and remember what happened this weekend.
To ratchet up the.
Remember what happened this weekend on Saturday. It's hard to remember with the speed of events.
Right.
Everything seems to be overtaken by events. But
Right.
let's just connect the dots.
Right.
So there was the armistice centennial in Paris, right? And 100 world leaders came to Paris to commemorate the armistice that ended World War I. Among the leaders who came were Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Benjamin Netanyahu. So Netanyahu had said that he was scheduled to meet with Putin over the weekend. Donald Trump and Putin were scheduled to have a summit also over the weekend. Both of those meetings were canceled. Both of those meetings were canceled.
By Putin?
By Russia, apparently. It's not clear whether the Trump meeting was canceled by Putin, but the Netanyahu meeting with Putin was canceled by Putin. Okay? This is like the third time that the Russians have refused to meet with Netanyahu openly. That Netanyahu says we're going to be meeting, and then the meeting is canceled. So Netanyahu met with Putin for like a few minutes, and you saw the footage. They're sitting in some sort of a dining room, right? Dining hall. And they sit down, there's a translator there, and the two of them are sitting down and talking for like 5 minutes. Netanyahu said it was important, but they also said that the implications of it were that our breach with Russia is much more serious than we had understood. That's what was reported. All right, and Trump and Putin are scheduled to meet on November 30th at the G20 in Buenos Aires. So when we understand that now it is what time? It's 10:33. So since 4:40 in the afternoon, between 4:40 in the afternoon and 10 o'clock when we started this conversation, over 500 missiles had fallen in Israel.
Right.
In the space of less than 24 hours, right?
Right.
In 4 hours, 300 had been shot. And we understand that a meeting on November 30th between Putin and Trump is forever.
Right.
And so that gives Iran a window of opportunity of 2 weeks. What are they going to do with it? Well, we're already seeing what they're doing with it. I mean, it's notable that this happened, and everybody says, "Oh, it's in response to the commando raid that was exposed." By the way, why was it exposed? Why were our top commanders exposed in Gaza? Because of the spying. There was apparently an ambush. They were apparently ambushed, which means that they were seen. They were spotted when they entered Gaza. What does this tell us? Let's just go back now to where we started this discussion. What is Israel doing? What is Israel doing? What can Israel do? If we just bomb a bunch of stuff in Gaza, or if we send off our soldiers into Gaza, and we invade Gaza with tanks, and with artillery, and with infantry, we're committing forces to that theater. And then maybe we'll need them in the north. In fact, the likelihood is that we will. We're faced with, and if we do what I think we should do, my personal advice would be to bomb simultaneously in Gaza and in Lebanon. That is, to recognize the nature of the war and to respond to the war as it is, not as we see it, but as it actually is, and take out as much of Hezbollah's military capability as we can, wherever we know it is. Now, in response to such an operation by Israel, what will happen? Well, Hezbollah already told us what will happen this weekend, that they're going to respond with massive fire against Israel. After all, you're not going to take out 150,000 missiles in one fell swoop in an hour. This is something that takes several days.
Right.
And in the meantime, Haifa's skyline is going to be altered.
And I think it's important to remind people, and you mentioned this earlier, that what we are experiencing, the rockets and the impact and destruction that we're experiencing from Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza is nothing, is a scratch compared to what, it's a pop gun compared to what we're going to be experiencing in the destruction from the 150,000 missiles from Hezbollah in Lebanon. And again, and therefore it's a two-pronged Iranian war. They're using Gaza in order for us to focus on that shiny object, where in truth, the true damage is going to come from the north.
Yeah. So I mean, look, they had a direct missile impact or mortar shot on a high-rise building, I think in Ashkelon last night. And the roof came in. This is a terrible thing. We went to war in Lebanon in '82 over much less happening in Kiryat Shmona.
Right.
60 people have been wounded since 4:30 in the afternoon. This is a big deal. And one person has been killed.
Right.
2 people have been critically injured. This is a big deal. Make no mistake about it.
Right.
But Hamas's capabilities are not Hezbollah's capabilities. And we have been deterred in Lebanon. And now Hamas is trying to build that kind of deterrence against us in the south. We can't accept the situation. It's too dangerous. But we're walking into a political year, right? Elections, if they're held on time, will be held in November. And in all likelihood, they'll be held earlier than November, maybe in March, maybe in the summer. How many politicians want to go to war in the immediate aftermath of a war, where you've had your skyline altered in major cities in Israel.
How many politicians want to go into elections immediately after war?
Yeah, what did I say? Yeah.
War after war.
Yeah, no. How many of them want to run for re-election in this circumstance?
Right.
You know, we have to take action. There is never a good time to do it.
Right.
There's literally never a good time to do it. But
Right.
here, and by the way, because Russia now has two legs on the Iranian side in Syria, you know, this is going to, you know, like, and by the way, Russia was helping Hezbollah in 2006 as well. You had a Russian listening post in Syria that was handing intelligence information to Hezbollah 12 years ago. So this isn't going to be the first time. But Russia's positioning in this war is going to be much more overtly anti-Israel. It's going to be much more overtly pro-Iranian. And it, you know, and this could end up becoming a superpower confrontation in Syria. After all, let's not forget that the U.S. has forces in Syria as well that have been coming under continuous threat from Russia, from Iran, from Hezbollah, and also from Turkey. So this is a mess. This is a mess. And there's no way of getting out of it, and there's no way of getting out of it with our hands clean. So what we've seen that Netanyahu has done, and by the way, a great political plus, because, you know, there are pictures going around the internet of, like I got, you know, WhatsApp last night, you know, of Netanyahu in a rabbit suit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because, you know, because he's a chicken, or, you know, in Israel you call it a rabbit, right? He's a bunny rabbit. That's what people are saying.
Because he's not doing what's necessary
Because he's
to protect
not taking out
Israelis.
Hamas. He's
Right.
not going after that shiny object in Gaza. But what I'm saying is that when you have 500 missiles blowing up in southern Israel after 7 months of unrelenting aggression, under which, you know, under the cover of which Hamas has developed major capabilities that are a significant threat against Israel. And at the same time, in the north, you have a nightmare situation, a nightmare threat that we are exposed to. You have to just, I mean, you have to deal with it. You know, nobody wants to. That's why there's been so much caution, because we keep trying to delay it.
Oh, so
But at some point, we're going to have to deal with it.
right. So I want to ask you about that specific point. Specifically, you said that the timing is never right, and now you're saying it's always being delayed. From my perspective, and I've thought about this for a long time, this situation, it's always delayed. One government after another government delays, and the situation only gets, and it only gets worse. Gets worse militarily. I mean, I'm remembering the 2006 Second Lebanon War. And again, it's because the deal, if I'm not mistaken, Tzipi Livni made with the United Nations, that these 150,000 missiles aren't supposed to be here at all, but of course they are. And the situation just got worse. We didn't do it with Hamas. Instead of dealing with this 7 months ago to stop it back then when it was nothing, it's grown into be, it wasn't what it is today. It wasn't what it is today.
Look, I mean, we have been cursed with, you know, brilliant strategist Tzipi Livni sitting at the helm of Israel's foreign policy in a proper, you know, in a horrible time. You know, led by, you know, the brilliant strategist Ehud Olmert and the military genius Dan Chalutz, and the defense minister who didn't know how to open up a pair of binoculars, Amir Peretz, in 2006. I mean, talk about flying blind, right? Jeez, we would have been better off having, you know, 4 blind people leading Israel in that war than these fools. Having said that, you know, yeah, we were dealt a significant blow in 2006, and the problem is that instead of going after the threat as it developed, you know, they kept saying we deterred Hezbollah. And that was a lie. We didn't deter Hezbollah. If we had deterred Hezbollah, they would have stopped shooting missiles at us before the ceasefire went into effect. You know, and all evidence has been showing this. But look, it's not a point of me telling you I told you so. I did. So what? You know, was I the person in charge then? No. And the people who have been leading Israel have been looking at this situation and have been reasonably deterred by it. I mean, this is a real problem. And during the Obama administration, right, you had a president who was siding with Iran against Israel. So what were we supposed to do when Obama is president? Go to war against his best buddy, Iran?
Right.
You know, he gave us enough problems in 2014. He sided with Hamas against Israel during Operation Cast Lead.
Right, and he stopped supplying Israel with the
With
necessary
Hellfire
ammunition.
missiles. I mean, and he closed Ben Gurion Airport. He stopped American flights to Israel and closed our airspace. So you had an American president in Obama who was siding with our enemies against us. How are we supposed to deal with it then? You know, I mean, it was a really big problem. So now we have Trump, who is on our side. But on the other hand, you think that Trump wants to get involved in a direct superpower confrontation with Russia, which is where things are leading? That's exactly where things are leading. You know, and when you look at obviously the political reality in the United States is not great for Israel. You know, it's true, thank God, that the Republicans, until, you know, the Democrats discover more votes that are, you know, whatever. But so far, you know, even with Arizona suddenly turning, the Republicans are remaining in control of the Senate. I mean, you have 3 open anti-Semites, you know, the women from Michigan and Minnesota, and that idiot Ocasio-Cortez in the Queens. In Queens, I mean, they're coming into Congress, and they hate us, and they don't make any bones about it.
Right, and it's a sign of a trend of what's going to be coming down the
So
American
when we look
politics.
at the Lebanon War in 1982, where President Reagan was pretty pro-Israel, right?
Right.
You had the left, which was much less powerful in the United States in 1982, turning against us in a really radical way. Right, and the left in 1982, and Israel was harmed by it. I mean, also the Reagan administration placed sanctions on Israel during '82. Remember? I mean, you know, the cluster bombs and all the rest of it. These were things that we needed to fight, and they embargoed them, and they put the Marines into Beirut to try to force Israel out of Beirut to protect the PLO, to protect. You know, the PLO against Israel. The Americans in 1982, the friendly Reagan administration sided
With the PLO.
with the PLO against Israel. So it's true that the Trump administration is friendly to Israel, thank God. And Jason Greenblatt put out tweets last night saying that the United States completely supports Israel, which is really important. But still, you know, I mean...
So putting the map on the table, basically we have a geopolitical situation where Iran is at war with us on 2 fronts, on the north and the front. And again, that's an important thing for everyone to understand. Hamas in Gaza, it's basically an Iranian proxy. It's a front. It's a second front. It's not a war against Hamas. It's a war against an Iranian war against us. So we have this 2 fronts that Iran has against us. All the attention's on Hamas and Gaza, even though the true danger is in the north. We have a friendly American administration, even though not the friendliest political situation, but a friendly American administration. On the other hand, we have Russia that is now 2 feet supporting Iran, and therefore making any Israeli incursion, self-defense, whatever, in the north in order to defend ourselves, very tricky, questionable, and not so clear what's going to be because Russian forces are going to be helping Iran. So what is Israel to do? What can we do, Caroline? What is necessary in order to protect Israel moving forward in this situation?
Look, I mean, again, you know, it's one of those things where the situation really does suck, and we don't have any good options. All right, we can delay more and pay a higher price, an even higher price. We're already going to be paying a higher price. We're already going to be paying a prohibitive price. We don't even know what the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria are likely to do, you know. But the head of the Shin Bet said in the Knesset last week that that Israel has foiled like 900 attacks or something like that here in Judea and Samaria over the past year. So we're facing a very problematic strategic environment and tactical environment. We're facing a problematic diplomatic environment and political environment. Look, at some point we're going to have to do. You know, and I think that the real question that people are asking themselves in the cabinet, at least this is what I would be asking myself, and you would be asking yourself, if you were sitting in the cabinet right now, because the cabinet is meeting right now trying to figure out what the hell to do,
Right.
is whether this is the time. Is this the moment that we're supposed to start shooting or not? Because the question isn't about, whether Israel is going to have to deal with this. The question is when. Is this now? Is the 500 missiles on southern Israel in less than 24 hours? And, Nasrallah's clear control over the Lebanese government and military. And with Russia where it is now, I'm sure Netanyahu is thinking to himself, maybe I can move Putin away. Maybe I can bring him back. Maybe I can neutralize the Russian thing. Is it now? I don't know. Maybe he wants to wait until after Trump and Putin have their meeting on November 30th. But he's not really the one that's going to decide if he doesn't move, right? Because the Iranians have already decided that this, right now, before that meeting on November 30th, is the time to strike. So I think that the real question here is, when is Israel going to respond? Not whether Israel is going to respond. When is Israel going to take these people out? If it can, and how, and to what level, and what are the goals of that operation going to be? What targets is Israel going to be trying to shoot? What are we going to be doing? How are we going to be doing it? I don't know. But I think that the strategic issue that Israel is facing, and has been facing since 2006, just to be clear, is when is the right time? And you can criticize Netanyahu and say that he's like Macbeth, right? That he's sitting on the pot, right? And he won't get off of it, and he won't make a decision to be or not to be. That's not the question. You're going to be, right? So when are you going to do it? And so that's been the criticism of Netanyahu all along, and before him, Olmert. And the answer is, there's no good answer. I think now looking, and he's also looking at it as a politician. If he goes after it now, and you have untold numbers of Israelis who are going to be casualties in this war,
there's going to be a political price.
What is he going to? How deep is the political price going to be, and what are the implications for Israel's security going forward?
Right.
All of these things are in his brain right now,
right? And
in the brain, by the way, of all of the members of the security cabinet. And all we can really do, understanding what we're dealing with, right, is just empower them to make the decisions and say to them, we get that we've entered into this zone where there are no good options for when. When we respond is always going to come with a price.
Right.
And so understanding that you have to minimize the price of action is now the time.
Right.
And that's really what we're dealing with. And Godspeed to all of them. And God protected those 50 soldiers yesterday. And we just have to pray that he continues to protect the Jewish people going forward, because and the people of Israel, also the non-Jewish people of Israel, because this is what we're facing now. And by the way, if we don't respond now, we're going to continue facing this going forward.
Right. And again, just to play devil's advocate again on the issue, this is the same question they've been asking themselves each and every time the cabinet has gotten together. Yep. Is now the right time?
Exactly.
And until now, each and every time they've pushed it off.
That's right.
Devil's advocate, if before September 25th, when Russia still had one foot in Israel and both houses of Congress were in Republican hands, I think that was a little better geopolitical situation for Israel than today, and just another sign that, again, with keep on pushing it off, it seems like the geopolitical situation keeps on getting worse for us
Again,
as well.
This is a valid point that you're making. I can't argue with it. First of all, the only thing I can argue with in your logic is that Israel clearly didn't anticipate what happened with Russia. Right? And I don't know why. I don't know whether it's reasonable that Israel didn't anticipate it, or whether it's unreasonable that Israel didn't anticipate it. I'm not in a position to know, and neither are you.
Right.
But, you're right. I mean, we could have gone after them in 2010, but we couldn't because we had Obama.
Right.
So, all of these things, woulda, coulda, shoulda, are all true. But they're not helpful. And so, I don't know the answers.
Right.
I really don't, and neither do you. And I don't think that there is a right answer here. That's why the decision making is so difficult, because there are pluses and minuses in all of these things. What we don't want to be is in a situation like we were in 2006, and like we're moving towards right now, which is where these strategic decisions are being made for us by our enemies. That's my cautionary note here, is that this strategic condition, this position that Israel is in, this horrible position that we're in, between a rock and a harder place, not just a hard place, but a harder place in Lebanon, didn't happen on its own, right? It happened as a consequence of concrete actions that Iran has taken to shape the strategic environment in the Levant in its favor, okay? All of the things that we're facing today are a consequence of actions and decisions that Iran has made while we've been sitting there saying, when do we strike? So that we have to understand that all of this strategic decision making has, all of it, all along, it has been going on.
Right.
It's just that we haven't been making any of those decisions. So really the criticism, if you want to make it, against Israel's leadership is that we have left the decisions to our enemies. And is there a way now, seeing where we've gone as a result of all of these decisions and all of these actions that the Iranians have taken since 2006, really since 2000 when we idiotically left Lebanon and gave it to Hezbollah. But all of these things, can we now say, all right, look, what we need to do is figure out what the right decision is for us.
Right.
And that's really, where it stands today. It's where it's going to stand tomorrow. It's where it stood before September 25th, and where it's going to stand on November 30th. So it's not easy.
Can I posit one thing, though, and please tell me if you disagree? On the one hand, it seems to me that if Israel does anything, it definitely should be while President Trump is still president, because again, we don't know what's going to be afterwards, and the leftward tilt that we see in American politics is probably going to be even more dangerous.
Well, I don't think that there's any question that that Bush is going to come to shove in Lebanon well before his current term of office is concluded. So
point number B is then also, knowing elections are in the pipe very soon, if Bibi wants to make sure that he's the one taking care of it, because you have no clue what happens in elections, and I don't know how confident he is, but he definitely should not be confident, that therefore the two points that have to conflate is one, that Trump is still in office, and two, that he is still in office. And therefore it has to be now or before elections, even understanding the danger involved.
But it is going to be before elections. I mean, that's the thing, is that Iran wants it to be now. It wants it to be before the sanctions come into effect and strangle them economically. It wants it to come into effect now when, for whatever reason, the Russians are completely on their side. So we know that Iran has an interest in going to the mattresses now, which is why they are.
Right. Right, they're pushing the buttons. So from everything I'm hearing from you, basically you're saying right now we have either two options. Something's going to happen, and something's going to happen with Bibi as the prime minister. The question is it going to happen now, or is he going to wait until his meeting after November 30th and then decide based on
And again,
that?
that's assuming something that I'm not sure we can assume, which is that it's not going to be decided for him.
Got it. All right, folks, you just got a really, really in-depth analysis. And again, it's not an analysis of Gaza. Gaza is just the tip of the iceberg. It is a much bigger picture. It is a much bigger danger with Iran behind it, with Russia siding with Iran behind it. Share this information. This is critical information from Caroline. Caroline, thank you so much for your time and your insights. And keep on spreading the truth out there. Folks, if you have not yet signed up to get direct updates from Caroline, go to her website, carolineglick.com, sign up for her newsletter. Let's pray. Let's pray, everybody.
Continuously.
Keep on praying.
Continuously.
And focus on the good times and celebrate what you got to celebrate. We can't always be worrying about that and pushing away the celebration of life that we must do. So keep that in mind also, everybody.
Absolutely. And again, Mazel Tov to your son.
Thank you very much. Shalom, everyone. Thanks for watching. That's two.